So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. And I'll do a quick intro to who I am and why I'm moderating this very exciting chat. So first, I am here with Joshua Fisher, or Josh Fisher. He is an AI content engineer for Carnegie Learning. I have been lucky to work with him during my duration at the company, but he has been a mathematics instructional designer with over 27 years in K-12 mathematics. He is a co-author of Carnegie Learning's Math Book series and has also contributed very significantly to Carnegie Learning's unique digital products and content creation efforts for MathStream and Mathia, some of our AI-powered products. Josh also spearheaded the creation of Live Hint in 2020 and is now leading the development of its successor, Live Hint AI, which we definitely welcome you to keep an eye out for some more announcements around that in the near future. Josh is committed to innovation in 21st century educational products, and his work embodies a passion for utilizing instructional design and AI to democratize and enhance learning in mathematics. So everyone give a big virtual round of chat applause to Josh, who is one of our two panelists today. In addition to Josh, I am honored to be here with Dr. Tyler Tarver, who is amazing and just loves helping teachers. And you can see this on the internet, where he has over 120 million views and 500,000 subscribers. He's the creator of a plethora of amazing resources over at tarveracademy.com. He has written 4 books, hosts multiple podcasts, has his superintendent certificate, and a doctorate in educational leadership from Harding University. Oh, and in his spare time, he's found the time to be a Google Innovator, Google Certified Trainer, Apple Distinguished Educator, and spent time on the Google Forms expert team, also spent time training across the nation with some of those teams. So Tyler, you've been a teacher, principal, director, dean, and I might need to hear this story later, a fake assistant superintendent. Very excited to see all of those perspectives brought to the table today as we talk about artificial intelligence and where we are with that in education. Don't forget to also check out Tyler and Carnegie's MathStream adaptive video program, where he is an instructor. And then a quick introduction to myself. I'm Jamie Sterling. I have been at Carnegie Learning for for 7 years, 4 of those which I was the head of the math product team. And I'm currently vice president of product research and development, where I'm particularly focused on developing solutions that leverage generative AI. So I'm so honored and grateful to be here, and we work together to always make sure that our mission is to empower educators and foster student success. And I'm really proud to be here as a part of that mission. So welcome to all our panelists, and again, a big virtual round of applause. Okay, so today, right as we jump in, we're going to make sure this is an interactive session. So keep an eye out for Zoom polls and chat questions. We really want to make sure this is a conversation with you all. So one thing that we have recently done in December of 2023 was host a AI survey with 799 total respondents responding to that survey. You can see that of that, 72% were teachers, 24% administrators, and 4% support staff. So we're really excited to unpack the results of that survey in this webinar with you. And the first and a very interesting discussion item, I think, is to first start with talking about optimism. Why are you or aren't you optimistic around AI? We'll then talk about the benefits for teachers and for students, really as educators see it today, and really zooming in on Josh and Tyler's perspectives on these topics. And then we'll talk a little bit about AI policies for classrooms and districts. And again, we'll try to make sure to leave about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat, and one of our Carnegie Learning hosts will respond to you. But let's get started talking about AI optimism and our first poll, which is, how optimistic are you about the future of AI in education? And this was one of the questions we asked in our survey, but you can go ahead, and it should have popped up on your screen now as a poll quiz. Go ahead and vote. How optimistic are you about the future of AI in education? Love watching the votes come in. This is pretty exciting. I don't know if you can see that yet, but I can't wait to reveal them to you. Our secret Vanna White, whose name is Amy Takabori, will be um, sharing these results with you. So I think, Amy, you can probably end the poll pretty soon. We have over 80% of folks have responded. Okay, so you should all be able to see the results now, which really indicates that we have a pretty optimistic group here with us today. Really excited to see that because I think we want to talk a lot about AI as an opportunity. You'll hear a lot about that. And this really does reflect our poll results as well, which showed that about 67% of educators that we polled of that 800 group were somewhat or extremely optimistic about the future of AI in education. And we did see a slight higher trend of optimism amongst administrators, with almost 40% being extremely optimistic versus teachers. So, really great to see the results here. But now I'd love to hear a little bit more about what Tyler and Josh think about this. Tyler, let's start with you. Why are you optimistic about the future of AI in education?
Oh my goodness, Jamie, thank you for asking. So I'm extremely optimistic because I see it as an asset to educators in helping students build those skills that they can take on from here. And I know a lot of things, like some people, they're nervous about it. They see the negatives where students, they're just going to type in the question and cheat. They're going to find all the answers. Here's the thing. We have faced that as educators with every new developing technology. Like, y'all remember the radio came out? We were all there. We remember when the radio came out, there were people that were like, this means kids aren't going to read. They're just going to listen to people talk. We're going to get dumber. That's other people that said that talk. And so they're thinking that, but guess what? It didn't get rid of reading. It didn't get rid of it. It just added that to our repertoire. Whenever the TV came out, internet, YouTube's going to replace teachers. Spoiler alert, it didn't. It added a resource to our classes that can help students learn from anybody across the world. We're going to have experts on their phone teaching them something. This development of AI is something that they're going to use in the class, ideally in the classroom, because then they can get the reps with a safe environment where an educator can guide them. So when they go out into the world, they can take that into their jobs. They're going to be the world that they're walking into, the careers they're going into. AI is going to be in every career, whether it's, customer support, whether it's helping them create things. You look at just a job. My job is to write 2 articles a week for a website. I write 2 news articles. Guess what? When I go in, like these kids, they go out and they apply for that job. They might have the skill of writing 2 articles, but they're going to be competing against somebody who knows how to leverage AI, not to just write it for them, but to work with AI. And they can do 10, 20, 30 articles a week where I'm just doing 2. So the more we can help equip our students to use AI and have it assist, not replace what they're doing, they're going to see a huge advantage when they go out and try to add value into any company or any workplace. And I think it's just a skill now where we as teachers, we are almost, and again, I don't like to, because different scenarios apply differently, but we're almost doing them a disservice if we don't let them learn this skill going out into the world. Like Chromebooks, laptops, iPads, using those in the classroom. Yeah, they're great and they help learning, but also they're learning how to use a tool that they're probably going to use when they go. A lot of kids use the internet with their jobs. So it's a tool they can use in the real world when they go out and they're trying to do what they're trying to do for their careers. Real quick, I don't know if you guys saw this TikTok. This is the way I kind of relate, the difference between leveraging AI in the classroom and not leveraging it. Did y'all see? It was a viral TikTok where these people were tracking their DoorDash. They had asked a DoorDash, it was like 4 miles down the road, to deliver some food. And they're sitting there tracking it. The person was walking their DoorDash they were like, we are 2.5 hours in. And this DoorDash, no, they were 45 minutes in, and it was like estimated to be 2 hours. They're like, we want our Wingstop. Like, we want our and Wingstop's in the comments, like, don't worry, we'll take care of you. But the DoorDash was taking that long. Were they delivering it? Yes, but they're taking the longest route possible. In the future, if we're not utilizing, if students aren't utilizing this, it's like instead of taking a car to work, they're walking or taking a horse and carriage. And we're doing them a disservice because, yeah, they're going to get there, but they're not going to do it in the most advantageous way for themselves and the people they're doing it for. Thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, that is so apt of you to say. And I also want to open this conversation up to everyone online with us right now to say, why are or aren't you optimistic about the future of AI? So feel free to share your thoughts in the chat as we share ours as well. So Josh, I'm going to put the same question over to you. And I know you ask an interesting question around this, don't you?
Yeah, so if we can go to the next slide, my optimism around AI is, and we can keep going actually.
I was gonna say more.
I just want to ask everybody here a question that is in the audience. Do you know a programming language? If you could just say yes or no in the chat, uh, I would love to see
I see
your
yeses and
responses
nos.
to that. Do you know a programming language? Now, that
Like
might be a little
yes-ish.
bit, might need some clarification on that question. All we want to know is, do you feel like you know a programming language? Um, that's the question.
I see a
And
nice mix. More yeses than I thought. A few more nos than yeses, and then a couple yes-ish and kindas, which I really enjoy as
yeah,
well.
for the most part, when we ask this question, we get about 50% now. 20 years ago was about 10% who said they know a programming language. But I want to try to persuade you, for anyone who answered no right now, you're wrong. You actually do know a programming language. That programming language is your own language. That's what LLMs and AI now bring us with ChatGPT, etc. Everyone, you and your students all know a programming language, and that's just your native language. That's what LLMs bring us. Uh, so when we talk about the benefits of LLMs and chat GPT, et cetera, we're sort of transferring those benefits of coding skills to LLMs. And if we see it that way, it's sort of, we can sort of get at a better place where we can sort of see how these benefits, maximize out for students. So at a high level, uh, and everyone who answered yes to this question will know, learning how to code involves a lot more focus on process than on outcome. So that's definitely a big benefit for education. We're talking about looking at ways to construct outputs that don't necessarily focus on the outputs. We're talking about the process, not the outcome. Um, uh, and how could this transfer to math learning, say, or learning in general? I'm a math guy, so I'm gonna focus on math. One example could be, let's say we want students to talk about, we've just gone through a lesson on dividing fractions, right? So we're talking about reciprocals, and we've all done the right thing here and not said keep, flip, change and moved on. We've given them a conceptual grounding. But what's the example of, say, a student who, or your class who you give this assignment to, that would say, you would say, all right, explain to me, use an LLM to explain to me why keep, flip, change works. So
And
that's, no,
Josh,
sorry.
I was going to ask if we could take one moment to norm on terminology, because we've had a question come in on what is an LLM, and it did seem like a good opportunity just to make sure that everyone understands the definition of what a large language model is. So if you wouldn't mind covering that for our audience as well.
Yeah, sure. So a large language model, and I didn't see the question, apologize, but
I
a
got an
large
eye,
language
no worries.
if you're using Chat GPT, you're using a large language model. So you're not using the web. You're using a large language model. These are essentially gigantic neural networks trained on an extensive body of language, mostly from the internet. Is that a good enough explanation?
I think so. It's a large language model that's driving, something like Chat GPT. So that's what's behind that. Exactly.
Right. So at a high level, we're looking at an activity, that, what are the benefits for students working with large language models directly? So we think about an activity that gets right to the answer. That's not going to cut it with large language models. We're going to have to up the game and make this more complex. One of the examples that I have here on the slide here is make the prompt the activity. So as I was explaining, like reciprocals, anything you want your students to say, you want to write a persuasive essay about dividing fractions. Make the prompt the activity. So ask students to talk to GPT and say, what would I do to make this outcome the best? But you're not focusing on the outcome, you're focusing on the actual things that you talk about with GPT. So all those benefits accrue with LLMs. Communication skills, they're all across the board. Precision, how do I talk to this? How do I make this device give me the results I want? How do I make it happen in a pretty short, I can't write forever, and also structure my conversation in a way that essentially demonstrates my ability to communicate and organize my thoughts. So that's where I see the big benefits of students working directly with large language models, is that you really have to focus on the outcome, the process, not the outcome, and the internal logic of what you're working on. And just as an example, pointing at this picture here, I tried to get this large language model. I said, hey, GPT, give me a large language, or give me an image of a student working on Chat GPT. And for the life of me, I could not get that thing to not give me an owl on the screen ever. I don't know why GPT is really focused on owls for some reason, but so this is another skill that just transfers over from coding. It's debugging. What happened? How can I fix it? How can I talk to other, people about getting this command right? I think that the coding benefits transfer over really well from what we know about the benefits of coding to the benefits of working with large language models.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And I agree. I think it's a great opportunity to improve aspects of communication and conversation. So now let's shift a little bit to talk about what we see as the benefits for educators, or what educators see as the benefits for educators. So when we did this survey, we really saw that educators who are using AI have found the biggest benefit to be reduced time spent on administrative tasks. So that's something we're very curious. I am seeing some really wonderful comments around things that you do in your classroom to use technology to support students who maybe have different needs. So I'd love to hear from you, your advice on how to make the most out of AI for reducing time on administrative tasks, or perhaps you're using it in one of these other ways, things like personalizing learning experiences or improving student engagement or enhancing learning outcomes, or even classroom management opportunities. So feel free to share your tips. We'd love for other educators to learn from each other as much as from the experts here with us today. Um, to that point, I believe this is where I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn those controls right on over to Tyler, who's going to share some examples of how ChatGPT can save some time on administrative tasks. But again, please share your advice in the chat as well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to get my screen pulled up on this, but this is like saving teachers time is it's my love language. Am I allowed to say that? It's my love language. I absolutely love saving teachers time because we as educators, we want to help students, but it's like we never have enough time to do the things we want. Like we'll cover the baseline because we're going to get the job done, but there's always more we know we can do. And so, several years ago, I started like leaning into Google and some of the things you do with forms and add-ons and extensions to help save time. And this I'm using ChatGPT here, but you could use Gemini. You can use several other websites, add-ons, things like that. But I'm just going to use kind of like this first one that popped on the screen about a year and a half ago. And I'm going to show you a really easy way you can save time. Here's the way. And remember earlier I said, use AI as an assistant, not a replacement. Same with you. Never just pop this in here and be like, all right, I'm going on break. You're going to toss it in and then you're going to read it and use your expertise. Use the fact that you know your class, you know your students, and then adapt it and change it to best fit what they need. But I'm going to show you a couple little things you can do to save yourself time, because if you can save 10 minutes here, an hour here, 20 minutes here, that adds up and you can get some of that time back. Cut out the busy work. Okay, sorry. That's my pitch. Here we go. So let's look at an easy one. You can do this with rubrics. You can do it with what else? You can create classroom management. You can create policies. We're going to do a lesson plan. So on my screen, I've got one in here. Create a 45-minute lesson plan solving multi-step equations. Make it on an 8th grade level. Attach it to Arkansas state standards. I'm in Arkansas. What's up? Also, please give supplementary videos and resources for students if they need extra help after class. Now, you could tailor this. You could say, give an objective, give this. You can list out whatever you want. What I tell people is try to stump it. Be so specific, you stump it. Okay, you ready? So let's toss it in. I'm just hitting enter. And hopefully, bam, it's making me an 8th grade. It's got my Arkansas State Standards materials. It's got me a 5-minute warm-up, an intro, guided practice, all of it. It's building it out for me. Okay, then I'm going to copy, paste it into a Google Doc or whatever. And then I'm going to go in and I've actually met Patrick JMT. He's a great dude. Really highly recommend him. He's got a great math YouTube channel. But you're going to go in. I didn't do that just to like shout out that like I know famous
That's
YouTubers. I know. What'd you say?
I was like, oh, I think I met with him once too. Now I feel special also,
Oh.
Tyler. Thank
Well,
you.
Jamie and I, we're a pretty big deal. We're about to start a podcast together. It's called the Patrick JMT Fan Club. So this, bam, we just made a lesson plan, and then I can go in and edit and change it. A little tip that I use is I'll go in and I will, like if I need, say I want 5 activities, or sorry, say I want to do 2 activities in my class, I'll ask for 5, and then I'll pull my 2 favorites. Always ask for more than you need. That's a little tip. Now, let's say you already have lesson plans. You're like, Tyler, I don't need to start from scratch. Oh, hey, it recommended me. Oh, that's awesome. I know myself. I'm number 5. Oh my gosh. If you want me to sign anything, let me know. I'll sign it right now. Wow, that's
I was wondering if you caught that.
I didn't catch it. That's about to sweep me off my feet. Okay. So let's say you already have lesson plans. Okay. But you're like, we don't ever have time to reflect because we got so much to do, but you could do even better. Okay. And like, I want to elevate this in a certain way. You can actually ask it to essentially pose itself as an expert in education. You could even pick a specific expert. That's a fun one to try. But let's say, oh, sorry, I'm doing the same one. Let me undo that. So boom, take that out. Let's say you want to go in and take a lesson plan you already have, and you want to make it even better. So I'm going to paste this prompt. Here's my current lesson plan for an 8th grade photosynthesis lesson. And then I'll say, here is the lesson plan. I can toss my lesson plan in there and I can ask it to give me ideas, tips, ways to make it better. And then it poses itself as an expert, and then it's giving me activities. It's giving me ways to elevate my teaching. We can cut out the busy work of creating the lesson plan, like the bulk part where we go in and we sprinkle on that sauce, but we can also use it to take what we already have and magnify it and make it even better. Cut out the busy work, but also elevate the things you're already doing. It is like having like an assistant in your classroom who has access to everything in the world, which is, on the internet. So that's it. And this is the part also where I'm going to show them the free course I'm going to give them if they want. Is that correct? Is that okay if I toss that in here? Just show them that.
Absolutely.
Okay, sweet. I'll show you this, and we're going to toss the link in there and the free code. I've actually made a course. It takes about 2 to 3 hours, but it's like I'll do a quick video, and I'm just walking through ways to save teachers time. And it's a ChatGPT for Teachers course. It's got 12 lessons. You bounce in there. It's got like resources, tips, things like that. It'll have a quick video, and then I've got all this in there. And so we'll toss that link in there. I want you to have that for free. Just for showing up and wanting to get that, because we're trying to cram all this in here. I want you to have this so you can kind of take your time and go through it and, save yourself time, because the more time you have, the more time you're allowed to go in and lean in and build rapport with students and magnify what you're already doing.
That was amazing. And I just want to echo the thanks that I've seen in the comments for actually demoing it live. So at Carnegie Learning, we agree with learning by doing and seeing, right? We need to get hands-on. And so we encourage all of you to go and get hands-on. And so to that point, someone had asked a question about, well, what is the ChatGPT URL? So we've posted that, you had it right. So you can go ahead and get hands-on yourself at any time. There were also a few chats that I caught that I am trying to pull back up, but there were a few really great notes from folks that only came to hosts and panelists that I just wanted to really quickly read through and how some of you are using different strategies today. So Rosanne for teacher planning tries to anticipate different student strategies. I really love this. They're inputting a math problem and getting information about potential misconceptions students may have. So thinking about common errors, misconceptions, how to overcome those in your instruction. I think that's a really smart, great way to use it. Others really agreed that it's good to save teachers time. The creation of rubrics came through from Sonia, which I agree. And Sonia also mentioned read carefully, you'll find mistakes. So let us be very clear that we don't think anything is perfect yet, and that there really is this notion for human in the loop where you're going to want to put your own critical eye on it and go, does this make sense, etc. So check out the links to Tyler's courses. And I also want to pose this over to Josh, and I'm going to reshare our slides here so that we can talk a little bit more about these best practices and benefits to educators and getting the most out of using a ChatGPT or an LLM or large language model. Josh?
Yeah, sure. One of my favorite topics here, because it's fairly simple, and it's something that's anybody can do at home. The first thing that you really want to do with large language models, if you have ChatGPT on your computer, whatever version you have, just start using it. Start conversing with it. Start looking at what outputs it gives you. Don't worry about your reasoning or your language. Just start talking to it. The second thing, and probably the most important aspect of getting the most out of large language models, is that large language models respond really well if you ask them to give you step-by-step reasoning. So ask it to detail its thoughts as it's producing its output. The other thing that is, I think, pretty surprising for even AI researchers right now is that AI behaves a little bit, like a human in many cases. So if you give it a very long set of instructions, it will remember the first and the last thing way better then it will remember the middle things, just like a human. Um, the other part of that is that, you know, coming off of that, we don't want to develop so many long commands that we just overload the system. So you can think about having this conversation with a GPT, which is sort of called chaining. And you give it a simple task and then move on to another task and then move on to another task. Exactly like students work, decompose complex things down, and build them back up. Another surprising thing about LLMs is that they are very surprisingly and can be surprisingly affected by different words. So one of the recent papers that came out actually said that if you say that you love Star Trek, your outputs will be a little bit better in math. No idea why. But other things along those lines are that you tell the LLM to take a deep breath. You tell the LLM that you can actually give it a tip of $200 for a correct output. All those things are surprisingly effective still with large language models. So don't treat, GPT or LLMs as some kind of alien, creature. It's something that can converse and sort of act human-like. One of the more important points of working with LLMs is that LLMs, we have to realize, are common wisdom. And that's a very key feature that is hard to explain. But you always have to ask, what do I really mean? One of my favorite English teachers in 8th grade taught me how to write by asking me over and over again, okay, what do you really mean when you say the forest is lovely? Do you want to say that in a little bit more elaborate fashion? Do you want to get more precise, more concise? So again, it's working with you're still working with a programming language, and that's one of the key benefits for students and for teachers, is to really think about what you mean when you're talking to these systems and trying to get the most out of them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate all of these great tips. I also want to make sure we leave time for questions, so I'm going to move forward a little quickly here. But I want to make sure we don't only talk about our educators, but we also think about our student users. We always balance those needs here. And so I want to really ask this poll to everyone. What do you believe is the most important potential benefit of AI to students? So feel free to please vote on this poll, which should now be live on your screen. And as you're thinking about this, let's also think about why? Why do you think it's, what you think is the biggest benefit for students should be that? Oh, sorry. So love to hear a little more from you in the chat around why you answered this poll the way that you did. I've got about half a vote, so we'll keep it open a moment longer. But again, as you're answering this, once you're done, go ahead and contemplate, why did you select that answer? Share what you selected and the why in the chat to deepen the conversation. Okay. If you're not seeing the poll, you may want to click and open some of your Q&A or chat from Zoom, but under the more, the 3 dots, there should be a polls quizzes option for you. Either way, we're going to go ahead. I see about 75% of folks have been able to participate. So I think we should end and share our results here, which not surprisingly, match the results from our survey, which is that generally students' benefits are strongest around building a deeper understanding of concepts or lessons. So I really appreciate seeing some of these comments coming in around why you chose what you chose here on this poll. To that point, I want to go ahead and, as you share what you think the biggest benefit is and why, I'd like to pose the question over to Tyler to talk a little bit more about his thoughts on student benefits.
Okay. And thank you for asking. So I love saving time with teachers, and I think it can do a lot of good in helping us magnify what we're doing. But what is really fun for me as an educator is looking at how you can help your students learn. Somebody mentioned deep thought, deeper thought in what they're doing, so much easier. So if I can give you one word, okay, one word of what one of the things that excites me about using this with students, it's the word that we love to do, but we don't ever have the time or the money to actually do it. And that is differentiate. I've seen a ton of comments in the chat about helping students that, speak a different language, or maybe they have like some sort of barrier that they're trying to overcome with their learning, or they're trying to bridge this gap in their learning, or maybe they need to move ahead. They need to be more critical thinkers. With this, you can actually differentiate what you're teaching. So you can grab the content of what you want to teach, and then you could put it in there, and then you can give it different prompts of ways you want to present that. Hey, guide this for my kinesthetic learners, guide this for, people who learn through this. Like, you can differentiate based on your specific subgroups of your students, and it can do it in seconds. It's not me being like, I'm going to dedicate an extra 45 hours to this one lesson to try to attach it to, 12 different learning groups. You can go in and spit them out, and then you can keep modifying that to get it more and more specific. Here's the cool thing. Not only with the groups, but you could actually do this for each individual student. So whenever, like, for instance, and this is just a little learning thing you could try, okay? So say you want to teach your students about the American Revolution, okay? Here's the cool thing. If you have something, and there's a ton of research studies that talk about this, if you have something that you're trying to teach your students, if you can tie that to prior learning or prior knowledge or anything they already know about, you're going to see a deeper understanding. You're going to see it click or connect in a different way. So try this prompt if you get a chance. I'm trying to learn about historical figures from the American Revolution, period. And then say, I know a lot about the TV show blank. Okay, you can put in anything. I know a lot about the TV show The Office. Relate characters and situations from The Office to people from the American Revolution to help me remember this information. It will spit it out in seconds. George Washington is like Michael Scott. They're both charismatic leaders who sometimes make decisions that they regret. You know what I mean? Like, it will tie these two things in a way that I know about The Office. I want to learn about this, tie them together. And you could do it with prior learning. Tie the American Revolution to, any type of war that they've already studied, and it'll tie them together. That connection is awesome because not only can you do that for your whole class, but you can let the class pick something they already know about. Some kids know about, Phineas and Ferb, or the Casey Undercover, whatever they already know about, and they can tie it in and they can learn on their individual level. Here's the thing. If we start incorporating the positive ways of using this and being deeper thinkers or critical thinkers or tying to prior knowledge, if we can help train our students to do that, they're going to be more successful. In my dissertation, I looked at a ton of research studies that showed 90+% of students are going to YouTube to learn outside of class. Whether you ever recommend it or use it in class or not, they're going there. Students are going to go to AI. They're going to go to ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these other platforms. They're going to go there to help understand this. If you can guide them how to do that successfully, they are going to be more successful. Research studies show students are more successful when a teacher guides them in this process. And so I want to recommend, go try it, fail at it, learn from it, get better, and help your students get better as well.
Excellent points. And Josh, I'd love for you to build on that just a little bit with how else you see that technology, like some of the AI projects you've been working on, such as Live Hint, can support. And I may ask you to do this kind of briefly because we have one more AI policy topic to get to before we
Sure.
open for questions.
I can be fast. Yeah. So something we've definitely been working on here at Carnegie is Live in AI. But that's not important. What is important are the general sort of things that we are learning as we work on this. One of the most important things is that, again, going back to the programming, we are programming this LLM to make sure that AI implements our values as educators. So what you're seeing here is a tutoring AI. This is Live in AI. I've had the privilege of working on this over the last year or so. There are a few points I just want to touch on with this and our learnings around developing something that is working for students. So first, very early on, we decided this has to be within the curriculum. This AI has to be embedded in the classroom, in the student's experience, whether you're in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Abilene, Texas, or New York. It has to be with your curriculum. It has to know the arc of instruction that you're going through. No one just learns math in the wild. And everyone has a context. We need to be sensitive to that. The second is that Live Hint AI is programmed to understand problems and not to solve them. This is another thing I was going back to with talking to LLMs is a fraught business in some cases, because you say, I can go to GPT and say, please help me solve this problem. That's not actually what you want to say to GPT. You want to say to GPT, help me understand this problem. And it just makes the world of difference. And then the third thing is that there is a human in the loop in every spot in this process. So we still need that. GPT and AI is just not there yet. You can't just turn it on and let it loose, maybe for some things, but not for, complex tasks like teaching and learning. You just can't do it. And then the final point I'll just make is that, all of this requires a whole lot of testing, checking, debugging. So again, back to that programming mindset. So.
Exactly. Thank you. So I think we can see that there's a lot of benefits, but I do want to make sure we don't forget about the elephant in the room. So we are definitely going to get there with our questions today. Before that, we're going to spend just a moment or two on the idea of AI policies for both classrooms and districts. One thing I'd like to invite everyone to do is vote on our next poll. Does your classroom or school or district, whatever you're here representing today, have an AI policy? And if it does, feel free to share some details of that in the chat. And while that poll's open, I don't want to give away the whole thing, so I shouldn't click too fast, but we will talk a little bit about our survey finding, which I think we'll see is probably going to reflect what we're finding on our poll today. I might have some precognition about that. All right, Amy, I would say for the sake of time and because I'm seeing really consistent responses on this end, let's go ahead and close this poll out, which shows that about 83% of you do not currently have a district, school, or classroom AI policy, which is not a surprise because that really does mirror what we saw in our survey as well. That said, we also received a question about district or policies, right? And I know we're going to talk about academic honesty in our question time, but there is a question about some lesson plans have IP where adding lesson plans to GPT is against district policy. How do we recommend navigating that? So, Tyler, I'd really like to turn it over to you as someone who has examples of both classroom and building or district level policies to talk about just briefly, what do you think is most important for folks to consider when they are putting these guidelines together?
Oh, excellent. So here's the thing to keep in mind. This is how somebody said the phrase in there, academic dishonesty. This is different than that. This is like we're used to copy paste from Google when you do the search. This is a collaboration between a human and an AI, and that collaboration is less clear. So I highly recommend in your classroom, and if you have control of it, your district, you have a clear AI policy. And if you do, and I've got a couple examples I think we're going to give you guys for free of some I've made that you can copy and then modify to fit your scenario. But there's two phrases that I really like when it comes to an AI policy. The first one is with prior teacher approval. With prior teacher approval. Any student that wants to utilize any AI needs to check with the teacher first. Even if you're like, wow, never allow it. Cool. If they check with you first, you just keep saying no. But here's the thing. They need to see, because there are some situations where AI can help advance the learning goals, and there's sometimes whenever it inhibits the learning goals. And so you as the educator need to be the one that delineates which is which and what helps that and what hurts that. So with prior teacher approval is the first phrase that pays. The second one that I really like, because somebody mentioned there, students cheating, them using it. From what I can tell, there's not a program that is perfect at detecting it. The best programs say that it's highly likely that it was used. Nothing perfect. So this is the phrase that I really like to have in your classroom policy. Every assignment, test, whatever it is subject to a verbal follow-up with the educator. So if I read something and I see this and I'm like, little Johnny, you don't write like this. You write like you're texting while skydiving. I need to be able to call them out in the hall and ask them questions about their assignment so that I can see and get a feel for it. And if I feel like they can't even tell me about the thing they wrote, then I should be able to walk them in and have them redo it. Now, there's some vagueness in there, but you should be able to follow up verbally to see and verify that they actually wrote what they say they wrote.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm seeing so many interesting comments and a just broad spectrum of folks who, you're blocking entire everything AI from a school or a district to those who have no policies at all. And so I think we can all work together to establish best practices like the ones that Tyler just shared with us. And to that point, I do think, there's this question, Josh, around how would you like AI to serve you? And because all of this conversation has taken a turn also towards, is AI encouraging more academic dishonesty, which was one of the number one concerns we found in our survey. What are your takes on those questions?
Yeah. Boy, I have a really disappointing answer from my brain. I think we have to wait. I really do. This is still very unsettled at this point. GPT-5 is probably going to come out probably within the next few months or before the end of the year, certainly. We don't know what the landscape really looks like for AI. We can start to make progress with students. I worry that we will pin too many things down early, and they will sit there pinned down. So I think it's a matter of, and I certainly believe that everyone should be involved. It should be administrators, teachers, parents, students. It should be a community decision, like everything in American education is. Yeah, I think that's the nuts and bolts of it. I really believe that it's a waiting game at this point. We're
And
really
Josh,
in early times.
absolutely. I think we're all in the same place there. And of course, there's that fear of the unknown, but I think there was an early measure you and I were talking about, and I had seen around a Stanford study. Do you want to share some of what we learned from that early study regarding kind of academic dishonesty in general and the behaviors that have been shown, over time?
The cheating study.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. So cheating is an interesting concept, and I take the long view on this. When the internet came, I'm old enough to remember when the internet started to enter into schools. There was that widespread worry as well. But education adjusted so that students can be given conceptual, rich activities. That's the adjustment that has to be made more than trying to deal with the technological details.
Right.
We have to adjust our strategies.
Got it. Thank you. Well, I want to make sure again that we do have some time for questions. So I'm going to open it up. Again, there is a Q&A feature that we'd love for you to use if you could to submit those questions so we can keep track and answer them. I do think, leaning in on that, if a district policy says that something, a lesson plan to GPT is against your district policy, you do want to generally abide by the policies that your district is setting out for you. So that is something to consider about, but it never hurts to open conversation around these things, especially as Josh mentioned, we are in early days and we are watching interesting technologies evolve and emerge, every day at this point. Feel free to submit any other questions. We'll keep an eye on the chat as well. Okay, good question around Live Hint AI. So there were a few questions around the release of Live Hint, which right now it is in beta and only available to some research school partnerships. So that's something we do a lot of. And if anyone does have interest in working with us on the research we're doing and really understanding the impact, feel free to reach out to us on that. But there's a question on will there be additional costs to schools using Carnegie products? At this point, I don't know that we can answer that, but it has always been thought of just like LiveHint as a learning support tied to our curriculum and our comprehensive, program model. So my expectation is that would be available within that comprehensive core package that we offer. So we will make sure that that is announced and shared as soon as we do move from beta to release for that product. But Josh, is there anything else you'd like to add about LiveHint and its upcoming plans?
Oh my goodness. I can't say anymore, but yes. The
Yes.
cost is coming down quite considerably for GPT usage. So look for that in the future.
Okay, I see another question. Do we believe in this statement that I see posted here, like the instantaneous response of AI, could that hinder the desire that students have to engage in productive struggle? So, Tyler, I think you kind of hit on that a little bit towards the beginning, but I'm curious on your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, oh, I just find the answer and boom, I'm done. Like, I understand that perspective, but I think that it's going to change. Like, the path is going to change. Yes, we may skip certain steps, but we'll have new struggles. The new struggle will be, okay, now I have to figure out how to partner. It's going to bullet point, and then I expand, and then it corrects. It changes what it looks like. So it's like trying to think of an example. So with going to a new town, when I go to a new town and I need to get a ride somewhere, I go on my phone, I click the Uber app, I put in the address, he pulls up, and I leave. I have bypassed the productive struggle of walking to a phone booth, getting out a Yellow Pages, finding a taxi service, calling the taxi service. Like, I have bypassed something because it's no longer a part of what I need to do. I don't know how a cell phone works. It shoots something in the sky on a satellite and it comes around, somebody else is on the other end. There's certain things we do need that struggle with. I just think that's going to change when it comes to what we're teaching students. And I think that's part of our responsibility as educators, figure out what do they need to learn and what is no longer necessary for student learning for them to, be productive citizens and go forward. So great question. And I think it just changes what that looks like.
Totally agree. Josh, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with Tyler. Like, as I mentioned, the nature of the tasks, if we assume that LLMs like ChatGPT are within the mix of our educational, sort of toolbox, then we have to change the game. We really do. And we have to, as I mentioned, like there's there are writing tasks that you can give GPT, and we can all sit and look at what are our prompts? How do we make that prompt work? And then the output is sort of, it's not irrelevant, but the process is more, the journey is more than the outcome.
Absolutely. I like this next question I see, just because it gives us the opportunity to look far into the future and make predictions, which is always a fun activity. So how much, if advanced or artificial generative intelligence comes soon, how much will schools and teachers become irrelevant to human life? Are we replacing teachers, or are we trying to truly serve them? What do you both think? Josh, why don't you start this one?
You can never replace teachers.
Yeah.
The how do you understand the outputs of an LLM if you don't have knowledge to begin with? How do you understand how to ask the question in the first place unless you have knowledge to begin with? This is the same argument that was brought up with internet is resurfacing here again. I don't know why, but it has. We need knowledge in our heads to be able to function in society. That's the ultimate power that we have, is what's in our heads. That's what makes LLMs work. That's what makes the internet work. You can't use the internet productively unless you know things already. So don't get me started.
Yeah, I'm with you. What about you, Tyler? Anything to add?
Yes, this will replace teachers if all teachers do is give you the answer to a question, which anybody who's ever taught in class knows that's not even the main role of a teacher. If that's the case, we would have been replaced by Encyclopedia Britannicas. Okay. Like we would have been replaced a long time ago. The most important part of being a teacher is not answering questions. It is guiding the social process of learning. And I think what this allows you to do as an educator is I no longer have to be an expert on all things. I can now just guide the process and help my students get to the answer they need to apply to a certain situation.
Thank you. And I know we're at time, so we're gonna get close to wrapping this up. We have one more question from the chat we want to pull and answer. And there's one comment that I have to share that really builds on what you're both saying here, which is it's this oddball question from David Amstutz. Does anyone remember an old sci-fi story, probably 1950s, about a machine that can do anything, just starts laying eggs and people worry that it's going to take over? So they trick the machine into flying off into space by asking to prove it can fly to the edge of the universe. Can't remember the story's name, but it sums up AI. A great tool, but humans are still in control. So I think that's a fun read. Although at the same time, artificial intelligence there's some books out there that can really get you into thinking forward. And so we always have to think about safety and the guidelines and guardrails we're putting in place in these systems that do have ethical, safety, trust implications, which leads to our last question, which I absolutely agree with and think, as Carnegie Learning, as a publisher and author, this comes to mind as something that's been discussed internally as well, which is, some people are certainly concerned about the ethics and the legality of the use of today's open LLMs due to evidence they were trained using copyrighted data without approval. What are our thoughts on these concerns? So, Josh, I might kick that one to you first as a rep for the Carnegie Learning authoring team. How do you feel about, those concerns and what we should be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. We are actively researching multi-language implementations, and the fact that LLMs via OpenAI were trained pretty much on English language internet is a really big setback. Not only do you get a bias in the language, but you get a bias in worldview and thinking. So that is something we were really monitoring quite a bit. We have to control for quite a bit. But yeah, that is a perfect. It is a reality at the moment that the large language models that we are currently pretty much exposed to have been trained on English text from quote unquote weird countries. Western educated, industrialized, rich and democratic. So, yeah, something we have to monitor and control for.
Absolutely right. Okay, well, I do think we have hit our time, but I just want to thank everyone so very much for their time today. And, Josh and Dr. Tyler, for sharing your insights with everyone here, as well as just thanking the audience for sharing your concerns, your thoughts, and your advice with each other. This chat was really fantastic, and we will do our best to try to export and share that out somehow with the recording, because I know that was a request from some of you. Please don't forget, there is a feedback survey. It would really mean a lot to us as we continue to put together helpful programming for everyone in education to get your feedback. We're always striving to continue to improve and do better for all educators and students out there. If you want more from Josh and Tyler, we've mentioned a few places you can find them, tarveracademy.com. There were some course links shared, and I believe you got a code that would allow you to access one of those for free. So super big thanks to Dr. Tarver for that. And, don't forget to check out MathStream, where Tyler is one of our amazing video math streamer instructors, doing everything he can to bring high quality instruction out to students everywhere, as Josh continues to work on Mathia and Live Hint, where we will continue to share out some big information. So keep an eye on that upcoming. Really, thank you all again so much for being here with us today.